Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we're digging into something pretty fundamental, really. How do you build communities that actually last?
Communities that don't just survive, but, thrive long term.
Exactly. And the goal for us here is to pull out some, let's say, actionable principles, things you could use for building groups that are sustainable, self-sufficient.
hmm Could be anything, right? A team at work, maybe a local community group you're part of.
Or even just understanding history better, how movements took hold. So, yeah, the idea is principles for fostering independence,
Yeah.
ownership. It's not just about looking back.
Right. And our way in is, well, it's to look back at some past missionary practices, not to evaluate the history itself, but to see what we can learn from the observations.
What worked, what didn't, in terms of getting communities to stand on their own 2 feet.
Exactly. What makes a group take root and become truly self-sustaining, beyond that initial push. The source we're looking at has some really interesting thoughts on those core elements.
Okay, great. So let's jump into those core ideas. The first one that really stood out to me was this focus on teaching that's, well, intelligible and practical.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's not enough just to share info. People need to easily get it, remember it, and actually be able to use it. The source even says, the test of all teaching is practice.
That's a powerful line. Practice is the test.
It has to be useful right away, right? Not some abstract concept that just makes you feel overwhelmed.
And I think the why behind that is key. When you can use it immediately, it shows you've actually understood it. You internalize it. You can even start adapting it yourself.
Like learning any skill, really. You don't get it until you do it.
Exactly. Same for building up a community's ability to function.
Okay, that flows nicely into the second principle then, an organization that's understandable and maintainable.
Right. More than just a goal, you need structure.
Yeah, and a structure the members themselves can understand and, crucially, support with their own resources. The text says it should have an obvious necessity.
Not just structure for structure's sake.
No, and it has to be within reach financially, even for small and infant communities. And the measure of success, whether it feels natural and actually lasts, naturalness and permanence.
Yeah, if it feels forced or depends too much on outside help, it's probably not going to stick around. It points to the strength of organic development, doesn't it?
It really does.
When the structure grows out of what the community actually needs and can handle, people are much more likely to get behind it and keep it going. Like, think of a successful volunteer group, its setup probably just evolved over time.
That's a good analogy. And this next principle feels super important for making sure that growth is organic. Independent financial management.
Ah, yes, the money.
The source is pretty direct here. Local communities should handle their own finances, no ongoing external subsidies.
The goal being to avoid dependency.
Exactly, and build real ownership. The local group raises its own money, uses its own money for its own stuff.
And there's a kind of built-in accountability there, isn't there? When it's your own resources, you're just naturally more careful about how you use them. You care more about the community's long-term health.
Whereas dependency can maybe unintentionally lead to feeling entitled or just not really owning the group's future.
Less investment.
Which links to the fourth principle, mutual responsibility and accountability.
Getting everyone involved.
Yeah, fostering that feeling that everyone has a stake, everyone's responsible for how things are going. The source mentions things like baptism, ordination, even handling problems within the community.
As shared responsibilities.
Right, not just dictated from the top.
And that shared responsibility, it really strengthens the bonds in a community, doesn't it? Builds trust, makes it more resilient. It's moving away from just a few leaders carrying everything.
Towards the whole group, ensuring things work. You see that in strong families, right? Or really effective teams. Everyone knows their part and chips in. Okay, and the last one in this initial batch. The free exercise of spiritual gifts and talents. Basically, empowering people to use their abilities for the community.
Letting people contribute what they're good at.
Yeah, the text says pretty strongly, authority to exercise spiritual gifts should be given freely and at once. Don't hold back anything the community needs to grow. And the test for giving that authority.
The capacity to receive the grace. Essentially, are they ready and able to use that gift responsibly?
It's about unlocking all the potential within the group. When people feel encouraged and trusted to bring their skills, their passions, you get a much more dynamic, resourceful community.
Holding that back just stifles things, creates resentment, maybe. It's recognizing the strength and diversity of talent.
Okay, so those are sort of the building blocks. But then the text goes a bit deeper into what powers it all. Faith and trust.
Ah, yes. This is crucial.
It argues the real power isn't just visible skills, but a deep belief in the potential of the people in the community. The source calls it the power of the Holy Spirit, but the principle is broad, I think.
A belief in potential beyond just the obvious.
And critically, it flags how damaging a lack of trust is, how it stops people developing confidence and taking responsibility.
This trust element really feels like the foundation for everything else.
Mhm.
The source even says, trust. The trust which begets trustworthiness is the one essential for any success.
Wow, the one essential. That's strong.
It is. Without that basic belief in people's capabilities and intentions, trying to build anything lasting is, well, it's likely to struggle. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know? Trust people, and they're more likely to live up to it.
Okay, so that's the foundation. Now, the text gets really practical. How do you actually apply these ideas, especially in communities that already exist?
Yeah, the real world, where things aren't starting from zero.
It knows that many groups have established ways, maybe a history of relying on outside help or one central leader who everyone looks to, that classic dependency situation.
And this is where that idea of the foreign element, like the global missionary, comes in. The text frames their role as inherently temporary.
It's temporary. How so?
Their main job, according to this perspective, is to prepare the community for when they leave, to work themselves out of a job, essentially.
So not building dependence, but building self-sufficiency.
Exactly. The mindset should be act as if there's no replacement coming. Because, as the text puts it, the native Christians are the permanent element. They're the ones who will remain.
That's a huge mental shift for anyone in a leadership or support role. It leads to some pretty specific strategies for building independence.
Like,
Well, first, association and education. And it's not just training a few chosen people. It stresses involving the whole community in everything.
starting from the ground up.
Yes, begin from the bottom with education, leadership development. Leaders should emerge from the community. It even suggests, at first, bringing all the business to the entire group.
To force that shared understanding of responsibility.
Seems like it. Make everyone grapple with it.
That broad participation is just so important. Spreads the knowledge, the skills, the ownership, makes the whole system much less fragile, less dependent on one person.
Right. And the second strategy uses finance as a teaching tool.
Back to the money, but as education.
Yeah. Give the community real control over local spending. Make sure they get where the money comes from, why it's needed, and it warns against fake consultation.
What do you mean fake consultation?
Like pretending to ask for input when you, the leader or missionary, already plan to do your own thing anyway. The text says that's fatal.
Ouch. Yeah, that destroys trust instantly.
It suggests even things like managing charities should be done by the whole group. A practical lesson in looking after each other, or the community managing its own school, maybe.
That hands-on financial stuff is powerful. It makes responsibility tangible, not abstract. People get invested when they're actually managing the resources.
The text also uses specific examples for involving the community in big decisions, like bringing in new members.
How so?
The whole community should be involved so they feel responsible for who joins. It's about educating and persuading everyone, not just one person making the call.
Shared decision-making again.
And same for choosing leaders. The real choice needs to belong to the community so the leaders feel genuinely sent and supported by their own people.
Not just appointed by an outsider. Makes perfect sense. It builds that internal legitimacy and buy-in, reinforces that it's their community.
And then there's this idea of the practice of retirement.
Stepping back.
Yeah, in two ways. Gradually handing over responsibilities, but also sometimes literally being physically absent.
To let the community function on its own.
Exactly, to create the space for them to step up. But it stresses this has to be done with trust. Trusting they can do it, even if it's bumpy at first.
That takes courage from the leader to let go.
It even touches on making sure the community can carry out essential functions themselves if the leader's departure would leave a gap, like certain ceremonies or practices. Local empowerment.
So this intentional stepping back, allowing the community to really take charge, it's vital for real independence. The leader's goal becomes making themselves unnecessary in a way.
It requires a lot of trust, like you said, and willingness to let go. Okay, but what if you're starting totally fresh? With a brand new group?
Ah, the blank slate scenario.
The text has principles for that too. And the big theme seems to be simplicity. Start really small.
Like, how small?
Like one simple truth, one prayer, one brief article of the creed. Let the community really practice and internalize that before adding more.
Slow and steady. Build a solid foundation.
And it emphasizes that the first people who learn have a responsibility to share it with family, neighbors. Let natural leaders emerge in these small settings.
So leadership arises organically again.
Yeah. And importantly, avoid imposing complex organizations or lots of external stuff right at the start. Let the structures develop from the community's own needs as they grow.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let the need drive the structure, not the other way around. It respects their pace. Internalization over just sort of surface compliance.
And what about when they go wrong, or when community practices clash with the values you're trying to encourage?
Conflict or disagreement, that's bound to happen.
The text says the main approach should be persuasion, education, fostering understanding, trying to get to the why behind the practice.
So influence, not force.
Right. And it says you need to figure out, is this deliberate rejection of something they know is right, or is it just coming from ignorance?
That's important distinction.
Sure.
Intent versus lack of awareness.
The very last resort, it suggests, is basically withdrawing if people are just unwilling to learn. After you've really tried to educate, the text mentions shake the dust off his feet.
Acknowledging that you can't force learning. There has to be some openness.
Yeah, it calls that openness of mind a crucial requirement for those being taught. You have to distinguish between genuine interest and maybe just showing up for superficial reasons like personal gain.
Discernment is key for the leader or teacher in that situation.
So if we pull all this together, the big picture seems to be about nurturing communities that can stand on their own. And the way to do that is by focusing on understanding, ownership, responsibility.
And that crucial element of trust, underpinning it all.
Right. And even though we've been talking using this specific historical source, these ideas feel really broadly applicable, don't they?
Absolutely. Building effective teams, strong local groups, understanding social dynamics. These principles about empowerment, ownership, sustainability, they show up everywhere.
They really do speak to how human groups work, how they grow, how they achieve that lasting independence. It's about trusting people to build something together.
Empowering them.
So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about the communities you're part of, your work team, your neighborhood group, whatever it is. How much are these principles actually being used?
Are people empowered? Is there real ownership? Is there trust?
And maybe, just maybe, what's one small thing you could do or suggest to nudge one of those communities towards a bit more independence, a bit more long-term strength?
It's a good question to reflect on, recognizing we all potentially play a part in building things that last.